First of all, I want to welcome our presenter today, Mr. Jukka Orava, which is a specialist from the city of Helsinki Education Division. And Jukka will tell you about the evidence-based digital open badge, enhancing professional development, teaching staff, and how badges have been basically used in this context. So please, Jukka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome to this presentation on my behalf. It's very exciting in these times to be in contact with people, even with these digital devices. And I have to apologize in advance for if there's any noise by a dog, because I have a Lapland 3-month-old dog at home right now, and she might be acting out a little bit on the other room. But anyway, okay, so evidence-based digital open badges in Helsinki City Education Division is the topic. And to give you a little bit background on the Helsinki situation, you might not be so familiar with this. So our education division is currently about 14,000 professionals, divided into 5 different sections like daycare, preschool education, comprehensive education, Swedish-speaking services, and upper secondary and vocational education and adult education sections. And to grasp the situation is to understand that we have like 65 playgrounds, 300 daycare centers, 100 comprehensive schools, 15 upper secondary schools, 17 vocational education locations, and 13 adult education centers. So the personnel is divided into these different places, which we have enormous amount of. And if we look at closely what the personnel is consisting, is that we are, actually the clients that we have about 25,000 kids in the daycare, 40,000 students in comprehensive education level, and another 40,000 in adult education level. And then we have about 9,000 children in the evening and playground activities. And in vocational education, we have 26,000 students. So we have a lot of clients with for the teaching staff. And for the teaching staff, which is quite complicated to describe, or let's say, when we're talking about teaching professionals or teachers, and especially if we talk about teachers, it's not covering everybody working in the teaching profession, especially when we are looking at the entire education system from the preschool to the adult education. But anyways, we have about 6,000 people or professionals that we count into this staff of teachers. And this is the division how it goes with these different educational levels, like almost 4,000 in comprehensive education, a little bit over 1,000 in vocational education, 5,500 in early childhood education, and Swedish comprehensive education about 400, upper secondary schools about 600, and on Swedish speaking about 100. And with all these teaching staff, there's about 150 principals and heads of education, supervisors for this teaching staff. And now early childhood education was not part of this open badge pilot project or the use of open badges at this stage. But anyways, they were able to apply for the badges if they wanted. The background for the learning badges in the city of Helsinki is based on digitalization of schools program for 2016 throughout 2019. So for the 4-year strategical initiative was the base for the learning badges. And why it was based on this strategical objective makes this open badge development a bit different from most of the open badge projects, which are kind of like projected and somehow a little bit outside from the core tasks that the organizations are doing. In our situation, the initiative came from the strategical objectives that we have to do in our work. So it's binding for everybody working for the City of Helsinki Education Division. And in this program, they presented a Edu.hel.fi reference framework for competence development for the teaching staff and continuing professional development and training formats and objectives. So we kind of like got the objectives and the initiative first, and then we had to realize how to go about it. And for me, I was doing my doctorate at Aalto University in 2016, so I didn't even know about this program. And when I came back to work at 2017, they presented me this initiative to start to develop the open badges for the education division. And the only documents that we had to go on was a little mention on this digitization program that mentioned the open badges. The entire program was very enthusiastic and had a clear development focus. The focus was developing the digital competences, the culture and leaderships for the teachers and principals. And it outlined a new form of in-service training and entirely new instruments for acquiring these digital competences that were now outlined. The digital competences framework was based on OBF complementary training framework, which was built by the government in early 2000. And it's basically very similar to every other European competence frameworks. It is in 3 skill levels and has about anything between 5 to 20 different skills in each level. And this Digi.hel.fi reference framework was kind of like Helsinki City's own version of the national competence framework. And we had a history of developing this framework as a basis for our in-service training, and what kind of training we offered were always based on this national framework, because the National Board of Education, the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Culture always pointed the development funding based on achieving these goals. So Helsinki City has had its own framework based on this one since the 2005. And I came into the service of the city in 2008, and we then built the first new competence framework in 2009, and have been ever since using it. For the digitalization program 2016-2019, we developed a new one, and it was published in 2016. And this digitalization program, it changed the entire way of how we train the teachers in service training. But it also changed the focus of the training, so that in this program, the competences and the skills need to be applied into action. So no more classroom teaching and just participating in the professional training, but it had to be something that is hands-on and developing those skills that you can right away, or even during the training, implement into action. And because of these changes, it changes not only the objectives, because now the objectives was changing the culture of digital learning, the pedagogical culture, and reforming it to these newly formed needs that are also known, or one of the terms used about these skills is the 21st century skills and so forth. But anyway, the form or the objective of the training is different, but also the trainers who is giving the training was changed. And it was, the entire program was introducing new forms of large-scale multidisciplinary training using forms of contact teaching, peer learning, coaching, e-learning, MOOCs, online courses, video teaching, teacher on-the-job learning, and the use of pedagogical portfolios. So in a way, the program was changing who is providing in-service training, and we had to let go from the traditional training organizations like the universities, professional in-service training faculties of producing this kind of training. And we had to use whatever we had inside our own education department, the expert teachers, and of course the professional in-service training units that we had actually all of the educational different levels of education have had their own unit of doing the professional training. But now when we amalgamated into one huge education division, then we had only one unit. So, so the changes were very big behind the entire digitalization program. And in this program, they stated that the expertise, the gained expertise, is granted by an open badge digital competence certificate that is in accordance with the Edu.hel.fi skill levels. So in a way, they were saying that, okay, we need to create digital open badges that are based on these new competence frameworks, and it will be outlining also the progress of this entire digitalization program. And on my mind, I think these were a little bit different issues, but anyway, we had the chance to produce and develop the open badges, so we went for it. And so we were in a situation that we had to combine the Edu.hel.fi competence framework into Edu.hel.fi Open Badges. And because the digital framework had 3 levels, the basic skill level, the advanced knowledge, information technology level, and ICT educator, developer, trainer, and manager skills levels. So there was 3 levels with 5 or more competences in each level. And from those, we had to develop the open badges. And here is an example of the first level from the reference framework. And it's the basic skills in the ICT use in education. And it's very basic, like it's very similar to the most of the teachers' competence frameworks that I've seen. But anyway, there were 6 skills on this first level. And we had to produce the badges for these competences and skills. So we started kind of like going through each of these competences and what they were describing, and thinking about evidence-based badges and how these badges could be kind of like visualizing or realizing the competences described in the framework, but now in the badges, so that it could be done with a simple evidence-based description. Like, well, examples are in this space the best way to describe how this happens. But basically, it is the work went so that we tried to find a situation where anybody would be using these skills described in the framework, and then describe it in the badges, so that it would scaffold people to write or describe the implementation of this skill, implementation of this skill into practice. And in this process, the first step that we had to consider was that the framework, the Edu.hel.fi framework, was described for the teachers. And it was always talking about teacher masters, teacher is able, teacher can do design, and so forth. And on the badge levels, when the open badges are meant for everybody in the education division, from the preschool to adult education, we had to get rid of the teacher word and replace it with something that is describing more about how to guide or tutor or so forth. So it's more about the pedagogical process and the cognitive aspect of creating a skill, rather than school orientation or teacher orientation. Luckily, we had already in 2010, we had a initiative that stated that every teaching process has to be described from the learner's perspective, meaning that when we were training teachers to use whiteboards or interactive whiteboards or new technology, we couldn't say what is the teacher doing, but we had to describe it. How is this technology helping the learner to learn better or in more diverse way these skills that are stated in the curriculum and so forth. So in a sense, changing or dropping off the teacher and going into a more versatile description, we managed to create descriptions for the badges so that everybody in the teaching staff area could use these badges. And it didn't really matter whether they were student counselors or on-the-job tutors or art teachers or preschool teachers or upper secondary school teachers and so forth. Everybody could use these. And in the process of using these badges, we have been iterating the descriptions all the time. So we've been changing them intensively. And some of the badge descriptions or the skill descriptions have been changed more than 200 times. So adding a little bit and taking off something or revising the text. But we have been able to create these changes and the iterations in the badge descriptions or the criteria, so that we haven't lost the connection to the original competence framework, which is very important, because the competence framework and its objectives were the ones stated in the strategical program 2016-2019 that we had to apply to. So they were mandatory for us to try to achieve them. And at the end, we have the 3 skill levels: the basic skills, advanced knowledge skills, and the ICT education developer levels. And because of the nature of digital open badges, that they are something that you have to apply, especially when they're evidence-based, we needed to start thinking right away when we describe the skill criteria to how can we manage the entire system. And because of that, we came up with the, like on the first skill level, there's 5 skill badges plus 1 supervisor discussion badge is part of the solution, how we manage to kind of like realize the entire system of evidence-based badges in teacher professional development and training. And I will go into the discussion badges a little bit later on for more, but now in this slide you can see that there's 5 skill badges on the first level plus the supervisor discussion badge. Second level has 6 badges, and the third level has 7 badges. So 18 plus 3 altogether, not so many. So who will review and process the badge applications? The administration or the leadership was saying that the principals and supervisors are responsible for directing the professional development of their staff, and therefore are responsible for the skill recognition and so forth. And naturally, the reviewing and accepting the badge applications should go to the principals. Of course, for us working with the principals and teachers all the time, we realized right away that this is not possible, because the principals don't have the time to do the reviewing, and they might not even have the skills to do the review of the badge applications. But anyway, they are the ones that need to do the official recognizing and kind of like accepting the skills description anyway, so they have a role in this system, that's for sure. So we needed to look for somewhere else. Who else could do this review for the applications? And because of peer evaluation is already in the curriculum, and it has been also in the strategical objectives for the city's education division. Therefore, we started to think about, okay, if we do the pre-evaluation by peers, that could give then the principals the advantage of just being accepting already inspected open badge applications. And this sounded much more feasible overall in the process, in the process. And because we were asked to produce the open badges to record and recognize the objectives and how do we achieve them in the digitalization program, we didn't have that much time to realize this entire system. So we had to use the pilot project to somehow create the peer recognition system, so that the principals and the supervisors could then be just looking at already evaluated, peer-reviewed, advocated open badges, and just like stamping that, okay, your skills are recognized, or okay, your skills are now officially recognized by the organization. And to do this, we decided that, of course, because this is a system that is actually visualizing the entire scope of our teaching staff's competences and skills, look through the Edu.hel.fi framework. So it was only natural that the advocates or the peer assessment people would go through first the entire process. So we used the pilot phase the first 2 months. When we created those badge descriptions, we used the piloting people in a manner that they were, as they were evaluating and kind of designing out the badge descriptions, they were also applying the same badges at the same time. So we had a hands-on experience of reading the criteria and then applying for the badge, doing the evidence, collecting the evidence, and doing the evidence-based descriptions of our ability to use these skills in practice. And in that process, we learned the criteria from through our own experience. And in this process, then when somebody else is looking at the other one's applications, we went through the advocating roles, so that whenever somebody did the application, then the other ones could look through the application and comment on that and actually iterate the criteria descriptions, but at the same time learning what it takes to be an advocate and how to do peer assessment of the open badge applications. So we ended up doing the entire system this way, and at the end we could then say that advocates, to be an advocate for the open badges for the city of Helsinki, you need to have completed the level 3 successfully, and then you need to have a permission from your supervisor that you can allocate time, or you can be the advocate for your school or your district or even entire organization, or even for the education division, or just a specific open badges. If you don't have skills above the level 2, or you don't feel comfortable of evaluating your colleagues' skills in certain areas, you can then focus on certain open badges, so that you feel comfortable of advocating your colleagues' open badge applications. For the advocates, after the piloting, or even actually in these numbers that I will be later on showing, we included the piloting phase, but we were offering workshops for the pilot project developing the open badges, but then we continued so that we offered a monthly workshop for the advocates to do the advocating or peer assessing the open badge applications in a workshop, in a one-day workshop that we would pay for the substitute teacher. This was the only way we could really fund or give resources to the teachers that were participating in this initiative, was to pay for their substitutes so that they can be working with us. And that's what we did, and that is the only thing that we have been offering for the advocate teachers in this initiative. If there is any additional resources for the advocates, then it's from their supervisor or organization or whatever. Like in the compulsory education, they had for 3 months, they were paying for 1 week hour amount of money for 3 months last autumn to support the compulsory education level to reach their goals in this initiative and do the bad applications. But that is a different thing. In centrally, from our perspective, we only offered this centrally paid substitute teachers money. So the entire badge framework looks like this. There's the skill badges, like on the first level, basic level is 5, plus the supervisor discussion badge. And once you have the badges, you will automatically get the meta badge, the level badge in this level. And second level has 6 plus supervisor discussion badge. And the third one, 7 plus the supervisor discussion badge. And you can, in our system, because it's this kind of a cumulative modular construction, you can apply any badge at any time in whatever order. And you can apply via online form. We have the hyperlinks for the badge applications in our support site. And basically you can do as many as you want in whatever order you want. And that is up to you. And actually you can use the same materials or evidence for applying more than one badge, but each badge application or the description about the skill is individual, so that even though you're using the same project or let's say lesson plan or whatever, in each of the first level applications or applications for the badges, the text describing it is different in every badge, even though the evidence is the same. And this applies also for doing a collaborative work. And we encourage collaborative works because that is also in the strategy, collegial co-working or on-the-job learning and collaborative work and so forth. That's something that we are also targeting. So even though if you're doing in a group and you have the same evidence, everybody's descriptions in the badge applications is different and it can't be the same. And that's why we have some amount of returning of the applications, or it's not rejecting or discarding the application, but it's sending it back for revising. And some of the reasons why we have done this is because of the same text by the same group members are using the same text in the applications, which is not allowed. And anyway, then when you are doing the or visualizing your skills in the this badge framework, each skill level is each skill level is a separate thing, in a way that because the digitalization program was programmed for 4 years, we initially thought that since 2017 we had 3 years left. We would target so that first year is level 1, second year is level 2, and third year is level 3. And to control this, then the supervisors need to know where is the staff development going at the moment, and therefore on each skill level there needs to be the discussion with the supervisor, so that he knows whether you have achieved all the badges that you can apply, and if you have any skills left that actually need professional training or peer learning or whatever method used to gain these skills, so that he can then supervise and tutor the person to the right track, so that the initial goal, achieving all of these skills, will be reached. So the process goes this way. So the supervisor discussion can be performed at any stage in the skill level, as long as during that discussion we know exactly what is already achieved and what needs to be achieved, and how to achieve it, whether it's by self-directed learning or peer learning, or participating in formal professional education exercises. And the meta badge is something that comes automatically once you have reached all the badges on the skill level. And of course, cumulative structure is so that the second level meta badge can be achieved only after everything on the second level is achieved, and also the first level is achieved. And the third level needs to have both first and second levels completed before getting the meta badge for the third level. And once more about the skill levels, the basic skills is really a personal competence level where we are describing skills that are relating to your personal use of ICT and digital technology, whether it's in teaching or tutoring or whatever. And the second level is about cooperative competencies at school or organization level. And this is something that is quite difficult already to start to train or to train. It's more about creating the opportunity to create and develop these skills in the education system. So in a sense, first level skills can be trained, but they are something that normal people, like in Finland, all the teachers are master level, completed their master levels in the university. So in a sense, everybody has these skills already. So there's no training for the first level. Then the second level is something that we do together, like curriculum development or peer lesson planning or teamworks and so forth, development projects and etc. So those are something that we can train a little bit, but in this new system where it's applied skill into action, or applied skill in action, it is something that we have to provide the opportunities to do together and actually understand the situation as a situation where they are developing these skills. And the third level, expert developer, trainer, manager at municipal, national, and international levels, is actually something that you can't train. You can scaffold tutor, mentor, and guide. But in a traditional, very, very traditional sense, you can't teach these skills. They are something that are gained in being able to work in these levels. Like expert developer is about municipal level or national level curriculum development that happens in groups that are either municipal or national. Training is always, even when it's inside one, let's say one subject, the participants are coming from many schools and so forth. So it is a collaborative effort. Managing is a teamwork, and of course, once you are operating in a municipal, national, or international levels, you're not doing it by yourself. You're doing it in a group, and this way, this is something that is tied into the actual structure of how to develop skills, how to distribute leadership and gain access to roles that you can do these things. The framework objectives, and therefore also the objectives, strategical objectives for the badges, were so that on the first level, basic level, we wanted 100% of the teaching staff to reach this level. And of course, 100% is very, very difficult. In Helsinki, where we have thousands of teachers, we have the changing of school, changing of city, changing from the private sector to the municipal sector is quite big. So in a way, 100% is very, very difficult. Even the second level objective, which was 90%, was extremely difficult, because once again, it's there are so many people leaving for doing their continuing studies in the university, or changing roles, or maternity leave, or setting up a company or whatever. There's so many people leaving and coming in that the second level is also quite hard target. And the third level, 20%, is very feasible. Actually, by the initial surveys that we had a competence survey done a year before, actually in 2016, where we had some kind of result that how many people are on these different skill levels. And on those surveys, we had more than 20% already on the third level. So in a sense, this should have been a very easy thing to achieve. But then again, because of the nature, how and what kind of competences and what kind of evidence is needed to be able to do the evidence-based or gain the evidence-based open badges, is quite difficult. But nevertheless, these were the targets, and of course we didn't reach those targets. It's quite impossible, but I have to say that we still have a lot of schools that did actually get these targets and above the targets. About the supervisor discussion badge. So each level has the badge, and this is the kind of like the organization's way of recognizing that certain evidence-based badges are gained by the personnel. And this way, the recognition is done of the development process. And then this has been one of the most difficult issues in this badge structure, the role of the supervisors and their ability to do the official recognition of the skills. And I will show at the end a little bit numbers so you can see how this affects how many supervisor discussion badges actually are and how many are we lacking. But anyway, this also the lack or the difficulties relating to the supervisor discussion badge and applying for them is bringing forth the difficulties that we have with the leadership, or how the leadership is actually involved in the entire badge system. Because if they don't manage to fulfill their role in this recognizing the skills phase, then there might be bigger problems of perhaps using the badges for developing the skills or the tutoring, mentoring, enhancing, directing the professional competence development that the teaching staff has, not only the legal right, but now also the demand or objective stated by the education division's leadership by the strategical program which these badges were based on. So the current situation with the advocates or peer evaluators or collegial assessment people is that for looking at the open badge applications from the 6,000 plus teaching staff, we had one administrator, which is me, and 19 advocates from 3 different education levels, 10 from the compulsory education, 7 from secondary education, and 2 from vocational education level. And lucky enough, that was enough. But the objective was to have at least 1 or 2 for every school, because like stated on the digitalization program, there was this peer networking, peer training, collegial training, and so forth, meant that most of the professional training done in, whether it's formal or informal in the education division, is conducted by the teachers themselves. So it would be only natural to have 1 or 2 of each school or organization or unit also functioning as an advocate or peer evaluator for the open badges. Since these same people, the expert teachers conducting or tutoring their colleagues in the school environment towards achieving these skills, or actually performing the professional training exercises in their school, were also kind of like responsible to produce the skills stated in the strategical initiative, so that they would be holding the training for those that don't have the skills, and then they could be only advocating for those that already have the skills and don't need the training. So in this way, when people or when the teachers are acting as an advocate, they would gain in multiple ways from the open badges, not only by reducing the number of teachers participating in the training by applying for the badges based on their prior knowledge and experience, and then kind of like allowing for the training to be objected only for those that really need the skills to be produced. Okay, about the open badges as micro credentials. So the same badges were or are still for all education staff from preschool to vocational. And it's evidence-based, which means they have to be a documented skill applied into action. And these evidences can be descriptions of the event, then plans, some kind of plans so that it's not only performed, but also planned advance, and then feedback about how the process actually commenced and what kind of reactions and outcomes it produced. Of course, the cumulative framework for the badge system, so that not only you can apply for the badges whatever order, but the skills are cumulative as well, like the first level being the personal level, and the second level being the group level, and third level being kind of like the expert levels. So in a way that advanced teachers or very expert senior teachers were thinking that they could apply only for the third level, it doesn't really work, because the skills on the first and second level are something that you need to have prior the third level in order to act in those areas, competence areas. So, but once the teachers were doing the applications, they realized that yes, this is a cumulative framework and these complement each other, and actually it's much easier to do the badge framework this way, so that it's a cumulative construction. All right. And here are some numbers that we are right now. So about 40,000 plus applications, 35 granted badges, and 91% of the badge owners have also accepted the badge, which is a quite heavy number. About the skill levels, achieved skill levels, they tend to well, they are quite, the scale is quite large, from 47% to 81% achieved the first basic level. On the second one, we are between 5 and 25, and third level is between 2 and 5% at the moment. So this is where we are at the moment. And here's a bit more detailed scale if you want to view how the earned badges are divided into different education levels and different skill levels, and into different badges, because some badges are easier to gain and some badges are harder to gain, and it shows on these statistics. Okay, we are running out of time a little bit, but maybe as a last thing about the badges and how much time actually they require is very important. And in order to realize this structure where we had the peer evaluation done first for the badge applications, and then the supervisors only officially recognize the badges for the organization, it meant that we need to really carefully think about how big are the bad applications and how long it takes to read through them and really kind of like evaluate or be able to decide whether whether the person can advocate the colleague's application. And this needs to be considered very thoroughly, because it really it is the breaking point of this type of a system. If you do it light enough, but in a way that it's you can stand by the criteria and the evidence, then it works. And in our system, we managed to do just that. We were able to create badges that to apply for it, it doesn't take too much, and to review it doesn't take too much. And at the same process, we are supporting the peer evaluation and collaborative aspects of professional skills acquisition and evaluation. And this way, actually making the evaluation of teaching staff's competences collegial rather than outsourced to some other methods. And this way, this system gives the power to the teachers themselves, as long as they are participating in the reviewing of the applications. And this way, they are kind of like steering the entire process and taking responsibility also for the future of the skills development, in that sense, that whether the teaching staffs themselves are using the badges for their own good or for the good for the organization, then the system is something that can really work on its own and doesn't really mean anything else. But there's a lot of other stuff on the images on this presentation, so have a look, and if you have any questions, please just contact me and I will be happy to oblige. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jukka. Really fascinating, because you have the whole process from the designing of the badge, from the competence framework, the assessment, and then the impact of the badges for the staff. I think it's I've never seen the big picture in this way. I mean, it's really fascinating. We have still time for some questions. So there were some questions on the chat. I think that you already answered in your presentation to them. There was a question from Ove, I think, about the competence framework. So it's basically the competence framework of the city of Helsinki is it's its own competence framework, but it's based on the DCOMP, I think, this digital framework. What? So it was this question, where is the digital reference framework based on the EU DCOMP 1 framework? So it's on the chat.
Yes. Did I have it here?
I think it was in the background, I think.
Yeah, basically because of the framework is based on the national OBF framework, and the OBF framework is in line with the European DigiComp and DigiComp Edu and some others. Actually, there's a very good Norwegian study done about a year ago where they compared the Norwegian system that they were building, and they were comparing 10 different European competence frameworks. And I went through that and realized that, yes, they are all in line in a way or another. Of course, the skills might be like in this in our framework, when you have a skill framework and then you do an evidence-based badge criteria, you actually combine different criteria into an event that are including different skills, like ability to take into use a program or application by yourself and read the instructions and so forth, is already including like 5 or 6 skill criteria from different frameworks in different parts. So, but anyway, yes, they are in line with the European DigiComp Edu and others. Also the DigiComp for the European citizens framework.
Yeah. So there is a new question. I was wondering, a question from Simon. I was wondering what kind of comments and feedback you have got, you have had from the teachers being asked to earn their badges, both those positive and those more cautious.
Yes, I think that this is a leadership question. We had, because it was mandatory to earn the badges because of the digitalization strategic program, but because the situation was so that those people that already had the skills could apply without participating in the professional training program. And whether these people were supported by the organization to apply, to do the badge applications. And some supervisors didn't produce or give any kind of support for those people applying for the badges outside the training for the skills. So that was the only thing that the people were complaining, was that there is no support or no time allocation within the working hours to apply for the badges if you already had the skill. And of course, if you didn't have the skill, then you participated in the training and then you applied for the badge. So that is supported entirely from the start to end. But even though those, some people that were not supported to apply for the badges were complaining, once they applied for a couple of the badges and they realized how they could use the badges, then the negative talk started to go down. We have had like a very negative emails or comments, less than 10. And that is something that is remarkable. And nowadays, if somebody is criticizing, especially this, that it's not officially supported to do the applications on your own time. If somebody is complaining or stating these complaints, then we have other teachers responding to these critical comments, so that we on the administration level, we don't need to participate anymore on that level discussion. Our difficulties are rather in the administrative level or leadership level, and there we need to kind of like make the leadership to realize how to use or how to take advantage of this kind of system that we have managed to produce. And it is working in a way that the teaching staff as a whole is no longer so negative about it. They have realized what they can do with this. And as the first and foremost reason when I was training the people for this badge system was to say that actually what we are doing, we are taking hold of the competence and skill evaluation process as a collegial effort. And so that recognizing the skills is no longer dependent on the supervisor, because in a collegial way we can do this. and bypass the supervisor that is, let's say, not so active on this matter. And that is a really big plus, because you know, the supervisors can be the biggest obstacle on your way developing your professional skills. But this way, when we have this system, the closest supervisor is no longer the hindrance, because you can bypass it with the system.
Thank you very much, Jukka. I think that we could discuss still a long time. The problem that we are recording it, so we don't want to make this webinar, which is very, very good, too long, that people can get back to it. So I think that we can stop at least now the recording, and if someone wants to stay for the question. But I just want to thank you very much again, and we just stop now. Thank you.
Thank you.